Hopefully you guys are moving along on your synopsis projects and your final projects in mind, and the changes made things a little bit easier for you. Took some of the stress. Everything should be set to go. The point values didn't change at all for anything. And in fact, I actually gave you 100 free points because I'm a nice guy. So we'll leave it at that. Moodle was being difficult with me, so yeah.
We make the order online. If this doesn't.
But let's get moved. So today we're talking about education, financing, loans, and scholarships. Very important topic. If you're following the news at all, this I feel will be a hot button issue that will come up in the next 6 months as we get closer to the election. Different proposals will be thrown out of how to alleviate student loan debt, how to do all these various projects, because if you look at it, I believe there's about $1.2 trillion in student loan debt in America. And part of the rationale behind alleviating that debt or canceling it, which I don't know if that'll happen. I wish it would, but if it does, then essentially this frees up spending power for people in our age demographic who could go out and buy houses, buy cars, do stuff to stimulate the economy. So in theory, it would work. There's also a lot of proponents. Some of the negatives of it people say is that it's just incentivizing for poor risk. If you took on debt, that's entitled. Always be skeptical of people that are making decisions for in Congress. I'll say that. Not to get super political, but people that are typically making those decisions, it's hard for them to rationalize a lot of times with things. This came right from the words of a politician in New Mexico who said it's usually people who are making decisions for those who have not, and or don't have the financial means for that. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. I would say most of those people who are in Congress tend to forget how expensive education can be and what that sets into theirs as we set up these boundaries and set up these policies. Very interesting, because as you'll see in these slides, and you've probably read the book, education is expensive, and it's getting more expensive. And there's multiple factors for that, but it's one of those ones that it still has to be there. If you don't have an educated population, it's not good. So thinking through how that all plays out and what that looks like, some of the questions that are fully addressed in here, but from a financing standpoint, is do you feel education as a right or as a privilege? Those are key things that have to be grappled with that come about. So when we think about what's the overall value of a college degree, on average, people with a college degree, this is a bachelor's degree, make $500 more in weekly earnings compared to the average individual. So there is something to going to. Now, that's not saying that every degree is equal. Professional degrees have the highest earnings potential. And those are, granted, you see these attorneys, medical doctors, CPAs, those that have these professional degrees can carve out a realm and have carved out a realm throughout history of being more higher earners. So that's why for me, it's very important to know how much your degree is worth. This is not something that a lot of students think about when they first go to college. But I challenge you guys to know you're finishing up this grind of a master's degree, but think through if you go on to get another degree, what's financial benefit of that? What's my career earnings? And I'll give an example of this is my sister and I. My salary is public information at Coastal. I make $55,080. My sister started out as a kindergarten teacher 3 years ago. We both started out teaching at the same time. I have the only differences. I had 9 more years of schooling than she had. She started out teaching kindergarten, making $46,000. So, what's the value of my 9 more years of school? Potentially there, but my overall earnings potential is a whole lot more depending on it. But there's always room to make more money. So finding yourself in degrees and positions where you can maximize your earnings is very important to getting the max return for investment. Think of your degrees as an investment, not just going to school. The increasing cost of education. First, tuition. Tuition is a very publicly known number. In fact, what's the tuition rate at Coastal? Do you guys know? Want to take a guess?
In-state's like 15, isn't it?
15 what? 1,000?
Yeah. Or are you talking individual credits?
Individual credit hours.
I want to say it's like 600, isn't it?
For in-state for undergrad, it's $430 something per credit hour. For a graduate student, or for a undergrad out-of-state student, it's about $1,010, somewhere in there per credit hour. For a graduate student, I believe it's about $500 something per credit hour for a grad student in-state. And out-of-state, I believe it's upwards a little bit higher. So the reason for the tuition difference is in-state, you get you pay taxes in state, so you get to pay it. That's your tuition break. If you're a state resident, you get a tuition break because you pay taxes, and that's how it bears out. The only problem with that is over the years, tuition, or the amount of money that is given to universities by state, has drastically decreased. This one. What percent of Coastal Carolina's budget is appropriated to them by the state of South Carolina? Take a guess.
%30.
Lower. Somebody else, take a guess.
15%.
Is it 20%?
So I got 15. I got a 15. What else? Abby, what'd you say? 20? The auctioneer
20.
here. 20. Try 5. 5% of our budget comes to us from the state of South Carolina. How do y'all feel about that?
We're getting gypped.
Yes, we are. So tuition at state institutions is a funny game that gets played. When you look at, there's different ways to look at everything. I've actually spent the past week diving into tuition figures and credit hour production just because I get bored. And that's what I do. So it's very interesting to see how that plays out with tuition overall, with that decrease in state's funding of it. What the state doesn't decrease, and the state doesn't come back and say, you know what, we're going to pay for benefits for your employees. We're going to raise how much you have to pay in, so that increases the overall expense to the university. Because at the university, where tuition you have to then take that into account to pay salaries and benefits of education, which is an increasing one. I'm gonna lie. The average salary for a assistant professor at Coastal, which is what I am, is $65,000. So, which isn't bad money, but that's $65,000 for somebody who usually has a PhD. We can do that. So those costs are increasing. You got to try and match that because you go work elsewhere. So because of those rising increases, that's where tuition has to increase. That's to cover because salaries and benefits at the university account for about 83% of the overall budget, which is where the second part, fees, come in. We talked about before. These are all your technology fees, your athletics fee, all these stuff is tacked on. Different is tuition usually is settled and the rates are locked by the board of trustees. Fees typically can be levied through the university, that board of trustees thing. And also fees aren't as visible as tuition, which gets to the last one of total cost versus tuition. Some of these other schools you've seen, if you look at Southern New Hampshire University or some of these others, they say, oh, we can get you in and it'll be $15,000 for this. Okay, great. So you're hitting somebody with a big number up front as opposed to probably nickel and diming along the way. There's different ways of how the pricing structure works, but overall the costs have gone up just as everything else has gone up in price over time due to inflation. But education has gone up more because of decrease in state funds. Pretty much that does. Scholarships. I know most of you are about to graduate, but if you're planning to go back to school, if you're crazy like me and 2 degrees might not be enough, 3, 4, why not get 5? Find scholarships. Do your research on these. Don't just take it for granted. So, there's this, or I got my GA. Just because you're a GA doesn't mean you can't go get more scholarships. Most schools have education foundations, as we have the CEF at Coastal. And then there's also a lot of scholarship money that goes unclaimed each year. And if it means writing a 2-page essay on why polar bears should be allowed to roam freely and eat salmon, then I'll write a 2-page paper on why polar bears should be free roaming and eat salmon, or why dogs should have free reign in a house. I don't care what the scholarship is. I'll write 2 pages if it might get me free money. So that's kind of how I view scholarships overall. And then there's grants. Usually your Pell Grants come up. This has been in the news lately due to the CARES Act that came out. Pell Grant recipients is how they kind of split the funding. Pell Grant's a federal program. And then the GI Bill, if you're in the military or families in the military, the GI Bill extends that right to you. I had a classmate out in New Mexico who I think was working on a 6th degree or 5th degree. Already has a law degree, was getting his PhD, doing other stuff, all because the GI Bill is paying for it. So if you can do it, get it. And then loans. First, you have your Stafford loans, very common. It's usually what you'll get, and there's usually unsubsidized and subsidized. Most often or not, you're going to get Stafford unsubsidized student loans. This means usually about a 6% interest rate. Perkins loans is another federal loan program. Haven't heard too much about it lately. It's still in existence. Parent Plus or Plus loans. I've had a couple of these. The great benefit of the 3 on the left and top is that they're all federal loan programs, which means when you graduate, they can be consolidated together. Private student loans, I put their stay away. I have both federal and private. The difference being my federal student loans amount to about $150,000 last time I checked. I try not to check. It's very demoralizing. But in monthly payments in the programs, I pay about $300. Private student loans, I have about $98,000 in private student loans, and I pay $1,000 a month on it. Essentially a mortgage. So think through that and how you're financing it all together. My wife and I continually have this debate surrounding students when they come to school, and my parents my family's in a spot where they make too much money for me to get any federal, both teachers and educators, too much money from when I was in school to get any grants or any other free money coming to me. But they said, "Oh, well, you can pay for their education," and my parents were like, "No, you can't. So go get loans." And if you do it right and use the federal programs, you will be okay. And then I highly recommend, as part of those federal programs, thinking about repaying this, it's a consolidation. Get it consolidated as soon as you graduate. Is my one thing, especially if you're planning not to go to school anymore. And then if you work, let me see this next slide. Yeah, as you work, you get to what's called the public service loan forgiveness. So you go work for a university, you work for the federal government, you work for a nonprofit or a state government, any of these entities that kind of counts public service, you can have public service loan forgiveness. And public service loan forgiveness is a great tool to have. You work 10 years, make 120 qualifying payments. And after you've made your 120 qualifying payments, you apply for your loan to be discharged, forgiven, and it's forgiven from that point. The key catch, though, is let's say you have $50,000 left at discharge. The $50,000 counts as a 1 year income for you. It just technically is absolved for me, so it's income. That income then hit your taxes. You might have to pay a slight increase in taxes, but I'll take that over having to pay for another 20 years. So there's that. Oh, let's see. Tuition tax benefits. So on your taxes, if you file your taxes on your own, and you're not claimed as a dependent by your parents, there are tuition and education tax credits, one being the lifelong learning credit, which I believe, no. Yes, lifelong learning credit is the first one. That one's good throughout anything, as long as you're using it to enhance your job or other benefits associated with it. Opportunity credit can be used 4 years. Most of you have probably exhausted that ability, so you're using lifelong learning. Those are both direct dollar for dollar tax credits, which means that your tax liability can be lowered by those, and they're a great asset. And then student loan debt interest. So as you pay your student loans back, you will accumulate interest on that. I think, yes, you can add up a sizable amount of this. You can receive a deduction of up to 25%. So this impacts your marginal tax rate. So it can reduce your adjusted gross income, that your tax liability could be lower. So there's just a percentage of tax you have to pay. It's good. When you do the math, you're like, dang it, they didn't really take off that much. But you can get up to $2,500 and your interest can be used as a deduction. Highly recommend it. So let's talk about buying a house. Fun times. First, when you think about renting is great, especially if you're in a job where you need to have some sort of mobility. So if you're planning to work in college athletics at some point, renting might be a good place to go until you get settled into a spot, because you'll probably be bouncing around year to year, every 2 years. Come with that, fewer responsibilities overall. Most apartments, you don't have to maintain a yard, you don't have to do any of that fun stuff. Most apartments nowadays, I know the apartment complex my wife and I used to live at here in town, essentially like a resort. Beautiful pool, big quad, fewer responsibilities, don't have to do anything, touch anything, maintenance. Comes in, fixes everything for you. Great deal. And lower initial costs. Most of you have to pay your deposit and you're good to go. So some of the disadvantages, you're essentially throwing money away each month with your rent payment. You don't get anything in return except the rights to live in that space. There is somewhat of a restricted lifestyle. If you want to have a dog, some units don't have dogs. So that sucks. When we were moving here, we chose the apartment complex we did because we knew we could get into it. My other complex I looked at said, "Oh, you have a dog?" "Yeah." "Oh, she's over 50 pounds. "Oh, well, then you need a first floor unit." "Yeah, I know. That's what we want." "Well, there's 11 people on the waiting list already." I'm like, "Nope, I'll go to a different one." So, actually things along those lines. And there's a lot of legal minutia that comes with renting that not really a fan of, especially with contracts. What could you do? You see it now, essentially in play around coastal. Students have rented apartments and done other stuff. Very much a tricky landscape. I need to get out of this. Well, I need to get money back. They're not going to give you your money. You need the money. So, yeah. And the advantage of home ownership, there's some pride in ownership. I can say that as being a homeowner now for over 8 months. A lot of pride in owning a house and what you can do. You also, if you're not a very handy person or do that, you'll learn how to be handy owning a house. I think in our first year here, I laid sod, come up with a solution to fix some siding on the house. My wife and I changed the sink faucet, fixed another faucet in the bathroom, built a gate for our screen so it hides our garbage cans. I mean, get pretty handy with stuff. So it's a good thing to have. Good skills to learn. Think about putting a tile backsplash in. So that's all fun that you can do. There's a lot of financial benefits that come with owning a house. A lot of times you can get more house than what you can rent for less money. And going from renting to owning, our monthly housing payment dropped $500. So good deal. And lifestyle flexibility. If I want to do anything I want on my property, great. I told my wife this when we bought the house. City of Conway kind of has like a leash law in place where your dog's supposed to be on a leash outside. I'm like, please, if my dog's in my front yard, you ain't gonna tell me what to do. That's my property. And, yeah. Some of the drawbacks, some financial uncertainty can come, and that it could, you're making an investment in a house, and you could have some sunk costs that can go into it from the beginning. Limited mobility. You can't just buy a house and up and leave the next year. You can, if you have the financial resources to do that. I don't recommend it. Usually the rule of thumb is if you buy a house, you need to live there about 5 years to make sure you have equity in your house when you sell. So make sure you sell that in your investment. And they say higher living costs because that comes with having to maintain it. I can say this, it's not that high. My wife and I bought a brand new house, new construction, so there's not there. If you go out and buy an older home, sure there might be some stuff to do, but like I said, you get handy and get crafty what you can do. It's fun. It's fun to fix, fun to do things. So, yeah. And then types of dwellings, single family unit, those have the best resale value. Those are what you commonly see. Those are the houses. You see a lot of multi-unit dwellings. So we say there's townhomes here in Myrtle Beach. Looked at those. They have some good benefits. You have to be careful when you're looking at those houses because some of them you own the land the house sits on, some you don't. So you own the right to and found that way. Condominium high buildings, as far as homeowners associations, usually condominiums have high homeowners association dues. I've seen some that are $1,000 a month for HOA fees out on the beach. So be careful with that. If you can afford it, great, but that pays for the lobby, all your cleaning, maintenance, those things. And then cooperative housing, I haven't seen it around here, but it's something to notice. Your real estate agent. Always use an agent, in my opinion. An agent is an advocate for you overall. If you're a buyer, it's free services. Don't waste your time though if you're not a serious buyer. My wife, when we first moved here 3 years ago, we knew we wanted to buy a house, and we would go around and look at all the communities that were being built, and we would self-tour ourselves and see what was there. Until we knew what we wanted, then we got an agent. A lot of times you can get an agent before you get an agent, you have to secure your financing for that. A lot of times your financier has agents they've worked with in the past. Highly recommend you you talk with them and maybe even use that agent. We did, and it came in handy. And with the financing, our agent got upset at the financier because stuff was not running like it was supposed to. It was nothing on our end. It was their end for dragging their feet and stuff. So he got on them, which is also good. The seller, if you're a seller and you're always use an agent for some of those protections, but their fee that gets paid to them, their commission, gets paid out of the selling the house. So there's incentive for them to sell the house as high as, and that's where the buyer's fee also comes from too, from the sale. So state of South Carolina, I think it's a 5% commission and 2.5% goes to each, or 6% and 2.5% goes to each, something along those lines. So financing a house. First and foremost, you have to obtain that. It's a big process to go through. Make sure you have all of your tax documents, all your ducks in a row when you're going in to meet with these people. They will know everything, know your numbers on your own. They're going to ask you first, as what is your financial liquidity of what you have, which gets some mortgage types. There's both conventional and adjustable rate. I am a huge fan of conventional mortgages, meaning you'll hear 30-year fixed. It's a term you'll hear, or 20-year fixed, 15-year fixed. That means your interest rate is fixed. In times like today, where the interest rates are really low, fixed rates are always better. The rates aren't going to go any lower than what they typically are right now. We're looking about 3 to 3.5, right? And that's because you probably heard of the Federal Reserve cut interest rates down. There's not a whole lot more for them to cut down. If they do, okay, but there's not much more for them to do. And that your interest rates are about as low as they'll go. And an adjustable rate, if the interest rates right now are 15, 20%, which can happen, and you go into it and you have a feeling the market's going to go down in interest rates. Well, adjustable rate mortgages can work to your favor. That if it goes down, you can say, okay, well, I'll take this rate now. If it goes down to 10%, great. You just save yourself 10% in interest. 10% in interest on a $200,000 home. It's $20,000 you saved. So think through that. First and foremost, our down payment. Typically on a conventional loan, the smallest down payment that you can make is 5%. So if you figure out a $200,000 home, 5% down, $10,000. That down payment sets up your escrow account, which you see over there, the little insurance thing. Escrow, which establishes, and they'd like to set that for 2 years, so it's essentially working ahead. And also escrow will pay for primary mortgage insurance, which is what mortgage companies do to make sure that if you go default on your mortgage after the first, they at least have some insurance so they can get money back. So, but the PMI, which is primary mortgage insurance, goes away after you've paid 20% of your mortgage. So, good thing to have. I think my wife and I, it's probably like $70-something a month, but still, once it goes away. So, buying a car, similar process. First off, timing of purchases. Know what time of the year. In fact, what time of the year is simply the best time of year to buy a car? Take a guess.
Beginning of summer.
No.
End of summer.
Define end of.
Like right before or right after the new year model comes out.
Correct. So right after that new year model comes, that's the best time to go, because dealers want to get that new model, because there's a lot of interest and excitement about new models that are coming out. As those new models are coming out and hitting their lots, those older models that are sitting there don't have as much value anymore. So they want to sell those, so you'll get some good deals on that. Also, know the area where you live too. When my wife and I bought our car, we bought it in October. Great time to go. It was also coincidentally the time when there's the fall motorcycle bike rally week. And we didn't know that it was truly fall motorcycle bike rally week. But we walk in, there was also a rainy day, and it was at night too. So checking a lot of boxes here. Walk in, and the guy told me, he goes, their general manager came back to the sales guy. He's like, well, did you sign the deal? I'm like, no, he wanted this. And essentially he's like, oh, GM said, well, we haven't made a sale yet in like 3 days because of the bike rally. It's raining. He just wants a sale. Okay. And then, so it works. So timing that purchase can work the best you can. Also, location. In an area like where we live here, there can be some differences if you go buy a car in North Carolina or South Carolina. Taxes can impact what you're doing. Shop around with the brands that are there, different items that you'll see. Some brands have different financing options that can come to you as well. The label information is on the outside of the car. I always try to negotiate back to what the MSRP is, not the price after they've already done all the dealer additions and everything else. Sometimes you can get away with it. Usually on new cars, there's not as much wiggle room on negotiation. Used cars, there's a lot more room. New cars, not so much. And then price comparison. Think this, new cars usually have really good warranties. It's in their best interest to warranty their work. Definitely get a good warranty on what you're doing. So the used cars, depending on where you buy it from, there's usually certified pre-owned cars and normal pre-owned cars. Just check those warranties to make sure you're getting a good deal. And then there's also service contracts. When we bought a car, I didn't want to have to deal with service because I was just coming out of a car where I had to put some good money into it over the years. So I went and bought an extended warranty. At that point, do anything from this point on for 120,000 miles. Great deal. Paid, I think, $1,200 for it. That's $1,200 up front, as opposed to I financed it in, as opposed to potentially paying $15,000, $20,000 with the price of the car. Yeah, easy. And then the good old question, buy versus lease. Oops, let me go back to that. I am a fan of buying, not leasing. Leasing is just like renting an apartment. You don't get anything for your investment. You're essentially throwing money away. At the end of your lease, usually they'll give you an option where you can purchase the car at that point. When you're purchasing the car at essentially the price that would be left on it. What they do with the lease is they take what the payments would be, so 3.5% or whatever it is, because they're paying you to use the car. They take the price and essentially instead of doing it over 5 years, they do it over 3 term. Okay, they know the value of it, break it down. There it is. But you would have just bought the car at the beginning. You would have owned the car outright after 5 years, as opposed to you have a 3-year lease and you still finance it for 5 years or 7 years. And a lot of times you don't get that extended warranty. So I'm a fan of buying because it's a definite benefit investment too, especially if you can buy it and get the terms and interest rates down to where you're paying 40 months or 48 months, whatever it may be. I know some people have 7-8 year car loans. That's, unless it's a Ferrari, something like that, and I ain't touching it. But think through those processes overall as to what you're doing. And also with buying, know who can be your financing. I am a proponent of getting financing first through a bank one of these other ones before I go to the dealership. I walked in. I know I already have financing in my pocket when I go in to go. That's a big benefit. My bank told me that she's like, oh, we have someone who's there too, but they can't give you the same deal that we're getting. And that's just a little game they play, how you set it up. So, yeah. Last slide, negotiation. Some of the key factors of this one, financing, knowing your financing that you have up front is important. What do you want your monthly payment to be? You're going to get asked that question a lot. When you go in to buy a car, they're going to ask you, oh, what are you looking at? How much do you want to pay a month? And if you go in and say, I want to pay no more than $250 a month. All right, well, we can make that work for you. And they'll look at it and they'll go, all right, so this car, she wants $250. They just put the formula work a slightly different way. And well, for that, you want to pay $250 a month. Great. So you're going to be in the car for 6 years. Oh, great. I need a new car. Fantastic. You got the payments where I want to be. The question you should be asking is, what's my interest rate? Because the interest rate can have the impact on it. So if you can pay slightly more, then take that monthly payment slightly higher, but get that term shorter. So if you can do 36 months on a car, which I believe that's 12, 24, or 48 months, 3 years. 3 years on a car. If you can do that, fantastic. Get it done with. So at that point, it's usually about the time that your warranty starts to expire. 3 years, 36,000 miles, common one. Think about that, because then you still have an asset that you can flip around if you want to sell it again that retains a lot of value. So a lot to think about that. Your trade-in as well. I hate to tell you this, but if you go to trade in your car and you look at the Kelley Blue Book value, you're never going to get the Kelley Blue Book value at a dealership. They will never give that to you. That's just par for the course, because they know how much that is, and they know that's what people look at. But they also know that there's what they need to buy the car so they can still sell it at that price. So it's a game they play. So, yeah. Any questions about what we've talked about today? Anything?
For the synopsis, how long do you want the presentation video to be?
No more than 15 minutes. Any other questions? No questions about buying a house, buying a car? Any of that? My wife says don't do it. All right, there's seeing no questions and not hearing anything at all.